"Don't do it, I know who it was," said the little girl to the millionaire about to jump off the bridge. The reason. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's begin. On a muggy, pre-dawn morning in San Francisco, as the city lights shimmered over the dark waters of the San Francisco Bay, Caleb Anderson stood motionless at the edge of the Golden Gate Bridge. His gray suit, once impeccable, was now wrinkled, reflecting the state of his soul. Just a week ago, he was the face of American corporate success, founder of Apex Innovations, one of the country's largest tech companies. Today, he was just another broken man, facing the total ruin of everything he had built over decades. The ocean wind beat against his face, carrying the scent of salt and the distant sound of the last bars closing along the Embarcadero. San Francisco was sleeping, but Caleb hadn't been able to close his eyes for 3 days. How could anyone sleep when their entire life was crumbling? Frozen accounts, confiscated assets, vanished friends, and worst of all, his name splashed across news channels all over America as the fraudster of the decade. His fingers tightened around the cell phone in his right hand. The last notification still blinked on the screen. David Vance, former CFO of Apex Innovations, presents new evidence against Caleb Anderson. The same man Caleb had taken under his wing when he was still a promising student at Stanford. The man he had entrusted with the finances of his empire was now leading the crusade to destroy him. Caleb took another step forward, feeling the cold metal of the railing against his palms. Down below, the black waters of the bay looked inviting, an end to a story that no longer made sense. "Don't do it. I know who it was." The childish voice cut through the early morning silence like a lightning bolt. Caleb turned, confused, to find a girl of about 10, her curly hair tied in 2 pigtails, wearing a faded school uniform and a box of homemade chocolates hanging from her neck. "What?" Caleb asked, not understanding what a child was doing there at this hour. "You haven't jumped yet because deep down you know you're innocent," the girl said, with a wisdom that didn't match her age. "And I can prove it. Who are you?" Caleb took a step back away from the edge. "Sophia Miller. My mom worked for you." She held out a homemade chocolate wrapped in colored foil. Fudge. Something about that simple offer, that childish gesture in the midst of his darkest moment, broke something inside Caleb. He took the sweet with trembling hands and sat on a nearby bench, still not comprehending what was happening. Sophia sat beside him, swinging her legs that didn't reach the ground. "My mom was Teresa Miller, your executive assistant for 3 years, Sophia explained, as she rearranged the chocolates in her box. Before she got really sick, she told me about a bad man who betrayed her boss. She found out this man was sending money out of the country." Caleb stared at the girl, unable to process what he was hearing. "David Vance," Sophia continued. "He's the one who stole. My mom knew, she saw everything." "How do you know this? Why are you telling me?" Caleb asked, his voice cracking. "Because Mom said you were a good man, that you helped a lot of people. And because I'm tired of seeing your sad face on TV. Everyone thinks you're bad, but it's not true." Sophia bit her lip. "And now? Now I live with my Aunt Clara, who was my mom's friend, but things are tough. I sell chocolates to help with the bills." An absurd idea began to form in Caleb's mind. What if this child, this improbable encounter, was his only chance? All his lawyers had given up. His legal appeals were denied. His reputation was destroyed. But if the girl's mother really had proof... "Sophia, did your mother leave anything behind? Any papers, any notes about this?" The girl nodded slowly. "There's a bunch of notebooks, and an old computer. But we don't have power, and Aunt Clara says we can't spend money on things like that." At that moment, a spark of hope ignited in Caleb's chest. A faint possibility, as fragile as the child's smile, but a possibility nonetheless. "Sophia, do you think you could take me to these notebooks?" The girl stood up from the bench and adjusted her box of chocolates. "I can, but not now. Aunt Clara would be mad if she knew I came out this early. She works nights as a nurse at St. Mary's Medical Center and only gets home after 8 in the morning." "Tomorrow, then?" Caleb felt his heart race. "Okay, but you have to promise me something." Sophia suddenly became serious. "What?" "Promise you won't think about jumping anymore. My mom always said that problems are like rain clouds. They pass, even the darkest ones." Caleb swallowed hard, feeling a lump in his throat. "I promise. Then tomorrow at 9 o'clock in Union Square near the bus stop." Sophia smiled and began to walk away. And keep the fudge wrapper. I wrote my address on it, in case you can't find me." Before Caleb could say anything else, the girl had already disappeared into the shadows of the historic buildings. That night, for the first time in weeks, Caleb slept. Not in his luxury penthouse in Pacific Heights. That place no longer belonged to him. He slept in a simple hostel in the Tenderloin, paying with a few coins left in his pocket. He dreamed of spreadsheets, numbers, and a girl with pigtails holding his hand in the middle of a storm. The next morning, Caleb woke with a purpose. He washed up in the hostel's communal sink, tried to straighten his wrinkled suit as best he could, and headed for Union Square. His cell phone no longer worked. The carrier had cut off his line for non-payment. It was strange how life could change so quickly. A week ago, he commanded a company valued in the billions. Today, he didn't have enough money for a decent breakfast. At 9 o'clock sharp, Sophia appeared, wearing her public school uniform. She carried a worn-out backpack and the same box of chocolates. "Good morning, Mr. Caleb." She waved cheerfully. "Good morning, Sophia." Caleb felt strangely comforted by the sight of that smiling, childish face. "Aunt Clara went out shopping. She thinks I'm at school, but today is a study hall day. And Mrs. Davis is always absent, so no one will notice," Sophia explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to skip school to help a former billionaire accused of fraud. They took a bus to the Bayview neighborhood. Caleb watched the city pass by the window, the luxurious buildings giving way to simple houses, some with unplastered brickwork, others made of wood. San Francisco was like that, a mixture of worlds of realities that rarely met. Until now. Sophia and Clara's house was small, with 2 rooms, but it was clean and organized. There were potted plants on the porch and a colorful calico curtain separating the living room from the bedroom. In the corner, a makeshift shelf made of crates held schoolbooks and a few dolls. "Mom's notebooks are here." Sophia pointed to a cardboard box under the bed. "And the computer, too." Caleb sat on the floor as the girl pulled the box out. Inside were dozens of spiral notebooks, most with floral covers, all filled with a delicate and organized handwriting. There was also an old laptop, a model from at least 10 years ago. "Your mother was very organized," Caleb commented, flipping through the first notebook he found. "She used to say that our memory sometimes fails, but paper never forgets," Sophia replied, sitting next to him. The first notebooks contained mundane notes, shopping lists, reminders of doctor's appointments, notes from Sophia's school. But as Caleb moved forward chronologically, he began to find more relevant entries. Teresa noted details of Apex Innovations meetings, conversations she overheard, emails she received. One entry in particular caught Caleb's attention. April 18th. David asked me to prepare an international transfer without notifying the legal department. When I questioned him, he said it was a direct order from Caleb and that it was confidential. But Caleb has been in Singapore since the 15th, and I haven't had any contact with him. Something is wrong. Caleb felt his heart race. He remembered that trip to Singapore perfectly, to close a partnership with Asian investors. While he was away, David had made transfers in his name. Flipping through more pages, he found other suspicious entries. May 2nd, found duplicate documents in the accounting folder. There are 2 different financial reports for the same period, one for the board, another apparently for internal use. The numbers don't add up. May 15th, David requested exclusive access to the financial system, said he's implementing a new security platform. The IT guys seemed confused, but he used an authorization from the president's office. Caleb felt increasingly agitated. These notes were clear clues that something irregular was happening within his company without his knowledge. But would they be enough to prove his innocence? Probably not. Personal notes from a deceased assistant would hardly be accepted as evidence in court. "The computer," Caleb pointed to the laptop. "We need to see what's on it." Sophia picked up the device. "The battery's dead, and the charger broke a long time ago." Caleb thought quickly. "Is there an electronics store nearby? A place where we can buy a compatible charger?" Sophia nodded. "There's Mr. Jenkins at the neighborhood market. He fixes cell phones and sells that kind of stuff." "How much money do you have from your chocolate sales?" Caleb asked, feeling humiliated to have to depend financially on a child. $32.50, Sophia answered proudly. "But we need that money to buy Aunt Clara's blood pressure medicine. Let's make a deal, Caleb proposed. You lend me the money now, and when I sort all this out, I'll pay you back double. Sophia considered for a moment, then smiled. Okay, but you don't have to pay me back double. I just want you to clear your name like my mum would have wanted. They went to the market, where Sophia skillfully negotiated with Mr. Jenkins and got a used charger for $25. Back at the house, they plugged the laptop into the outlet and waited anxiously. After a few minutes, the screen lit up. The computer was old and slow, but it still worked. When it reached the login screen, the first obstacle appeared. They needed a password. Do you know what your mum's password was? Caleb asked. Sophia bit her lip, thinking. She used my birthday for almost everything. 2072013. Caleb typed in the numbers, but the password was rejected. Or maybe my grandma's name. Amelia 958. Another try, another failure. Sophia sighed, frustrated. I don't know what else it could be. Caleb looked around the room, searching for inspiration. His eyes landed on a framed photo on the wall, Teresa and Sophia in front of a cable car, both smiling with ice cream cones in their hands. When was this picture taken? Caleb asked. On my 7th birthday. It was our special day, just me and her. And where did you go besides the cable cars? Sophia smiled at the memory. We went to the ferry building marketplace, then had clam chowder in a sourdough bowl at Fisherman's Wharf, and we ended the day at the Golden Gate Bridge watching the sunset. Mom called it our SF Sophie Day tour, a mix of the city's name and mine. SF Sophie Day, Caleb murmured, typing the word into the password field. The screen flickered, and to their surprise the system began to load. It worked. Sophia clapped her hands, excited. The desktop was simple with few icons. There was a folder named Work and another named Personal. Caleb clicked on the first one. Inside, several documents were organized by date. He opened the most recent files and found what he was looking for: financial spreadsheets, screenshots of transfers, copies of emails. One email in particular caught his eye. It was a message from David to a person identified only as Contact Panama, discussing the opening of offshore accounts and mentioning exact amounts that matched the holes in Apex Innovations' finances now attributed to Caleb. My God, Caleb murmured, feeling a mix of anger and relief. She had everything. Teresa gathered enough evidence to bring David down. Then why didn't she show it to anyone? Sophia asked. Caleb continued exploring the files and found a text document titled Decision. It was a sort of personal letter Teresa had written to herself. After weeks of investigating, I'm sure that David is embezzling money from the company. I thought about talking to Caleb directly, but I realized David has built a protective network, placing key people in strategic positions. He controls finance, legal, and even part of the board now. If I speak up, it's my word against his, and Sophia would be exposed. With my health getting worse, I can't risk it. I've decided to make copies of everything and hide them in a safe place. When the time is right, the truth will come out. Caleb felt a lump in his throat. Teresa had discovered everything but feared for her daughter's safety. And now she was. Your mother was a very brave and intelligent woman, Caleb said, gently touching Sophia's shoulder. She used to say that sometimes you have to be patient for justice to happen, the girl replied, her eyes welling up. It says here she hid copies in a safe place. Do you have any idea where that could be? Sophia frowned, concentrating. Mom always hid important things in places only I knew about. It was our secret game. Is there a special place for you two? A hiding spot only you knew? Sophia was silent for a few seconds, then her face lit up. The pigeon bench. On the Marina Green near the bridge, there's a bench where we always went to feed the pigeons on Sundays. Mom said it was our corner of the world, where we could watch people from all over pass by. It was a possibility. Caleb glanced at the makeshift clock on the living room wall, almost noon. Aunt Clara could be back any minute. We need to go there, Sophia, now. But what about the computer? And the notebooks? The girl looked worried. We'll take what we can in your backpack. The computer is very important. As Sophia emptied her school backpack to fit the laptop and some of the most relevant notebooks, Caleb heard a noise at the front door. Before they could react, Aunt Clara entered the room, carrying shopping bags. Her face went from surprise to shock and then to fury upon seeing an unknown man in her living room, along with Sophia, who was supposed to be at school. "Who are you and what are you doing with this child?" she yelled, dropping the bags to the floor. Her eyes widened even more as she recognized Caleb's face from the news. "My God, you're that businessman, the fraudster. Sophia, get over here right now." "Aunt Clara, it's not what you think." Sophia ran to the woman. "He's innocent." Mom knew it, she left proof. "What is this nonsense?" "Sophia, you shouldn't be talking to strangers, let alone bringing them home." Aunt Clara pulled the girl behind her protectively. Caleb raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Ma'am, I understand your concern. It sounds crazy, I know. But Sophia is helping me prove my innocence. Her mother, Teresa, left evidence that can clear my name. And why should I believe you?" Aunt Clara asked, suspicious. "Because Mr. Caleb was about to jump off the bridge last night," Sophia interrupted, her childish voice filled with seriousness. "I saw him, and I remembered what Mom used to say about him, that he was a good man who was betrayed." Aunt Clara looked from Sophia to Caleb, suspicion still evident on her face. "Clara, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but this is my life we're talking about. Everything I built over decades was destroyed in a week. I'm being accused of something I didn't do." Caleb's voice broke. "Sophia gave me hope when I had none left. If there's even the slightest chance that Teresa left proof that can help me, I have to try." The woman sighed deeply, seemingly debating with herself. "Teresa was like a sister to me," she finally said. "In the last few months before she left us, she was acting strange, worried. She said she had discovered something serious at work, but she never went into detail." Clara looked at Sophia with tenderness. "And this girl has a huge heart, just like her mother. If she believes in you, there must be something to it." "So you'll let us go to the pigeon bench?" Sophia asked hopefully. "I'll let you go, but not us go. I'm going with you." Clara crossed her arms. "Sophia is not going anywhere with a stranger, even if he's a wronged ex-billionaire." Caleb nodded, relieved. "That's more than fair." Half an hour later, the three of them were on a bus heading towards the Marina Green. Sophia, excited about the secret mission, as she called it, couldn't stop talking about how much she loved going to that bench with her mother. Clara, still wary, kept a watchful eye on Caleb, who was carrying the backpack with the laptop and notebooks. When they arrived at the waterfront, Sophia ran ahead, leading them to a wooden bench worn by the sun and sea air, facing the water. It was a prime spot with a view of the beach and the famous bridge. "This is it," the girl announced. "This is our special bench." Caleb looked around. It was an ordinary bench, seemingly nothing special about it. "Sophia, are you sure your mom would hide something here? It seems so public." "Mom used to say that sometimes the best hiding place is the one everyone sees, but nobody notices," Sophia replied, crouching down to examine the bench. She ran her small hands over the wooden structure, looking for something. Her fingers stopped at a small crack on the underside of one of the seat planks. "There's something different here." Caleb and Clara moved closer. Indeed, there was a small, almost imperceptible opening. "Let me see," Caleb asked, crouching beside the girl. He stuck his fingers into the crack and felt something. It was small and metallic. Carefully, he pulled out the object, a tiny key, the kind used for padlocks. "A key?" Clara frowned. "Now where's the lock?" Sophia looked at the key intently. "It's not for a padlock. It's for a small locker." She pointed to the nearby kiosks. "Over there, those lockers for beachgoers to store their personal items. Mom always rented one when we came to the beach, so we wouldn't have to worry about our things." The three of them headed to the lockers located near the public restrooms. There were dozens of them, numbered sequentially. "What's the number?" Caleb asked, examining the key, which had no tag. Sophia bit her lip. "I don't know. It must be something significant for you two, like the computer password," Clara suggested. "SF Sophie Day," Sophia murmured thoughtfully. Then her eyes lit up. "I know. That 907 my birthday. It was Mom's favorite number." They found locker 0907 in one of the middle rows. Caleb inserted the key with trembling hands. To his relief, the lock turned, and the door of the small compartment swung open. Inside, there was a sealed manila envelope and a red flash drive. "We found it!" Sophia exclaimed, jumping for joy. Caleb picked up the items reverently, as if holding sacred relics. He opened the envelope first. Inside was a handwritten letter and some printed photos showing computer screens with bank transactions, all highlighting David, Vance's name as the authorizer. The letter began, "To whoever finds this material, my name is Teresa Miller, Executive Assistant to Mr. Caleb Anderson at Apex Innovations, Inc. What you hold in your hands is proof that David Vance, the current CFO, has been embezzling company funds into personal accounts abroad. For months I have documented his actions, gathering evidence that proves his guilt. If you are reading this, it means something prevented me from taking this evidence directly to the authorities. On the attached flash drive, you will find all the digital files, including emails, spreadsheets, and recordings of conversations that prove the fraud perpetrated by David." Caleb felt a wave of conflicting emotions: relief, sadness, hope, anger. Teresa had gathered all the necessary evidence to save him, but never had the chance to use it. "We need to take this to the police immediately," Caleb said, carefully placing the items in the inner pocket of his jacket. "Wouldn't it be better to find a lawyer first?" Clara suggested worriedly. "The police might not believe you, considering your current situation." "I have a better idea," Caleb said after a few moments of thought. "I know a journalist, Victoria Lane from the San Francisco Chronicle. She was always fair in her reporting on me, even in my successful days. If we can get her to see this evidence and publish the story, public pressure will force the authorities to act." "How are we going to talk to her?" Sophia asked. "Your phone doesn't work and we can't just show up at the newspaper." "We're going to the newsroom right now," Caleb decided. "Victoria used to work late. With any luck, she'll be there." As they walked back to catch the bus, Caleb felt different. For the first time in days, there was hope. A 10-year-old girl and her careful mother had just given him a second chance at life. "You know, Sophia," Caleb said, holding the girl's hand as they crossed the street, "when this is all over, I want to do something to thank you and your mother." "What?" Sophia asked, curious. "I was thinking of creating a scholarship program in your mother's name, to help kids like you get the best opportunities." Sophia's eyes sparkled. Mom would have liked that. She always said that education is the one thing no one can take away from you. On the horizon, the sun began to set over the San Francisco Bay. As they waited at the bus stop, Caleb looked at the Golden Gate Bridge, a symbol of guidance for sailors lost at sea. At that moment, he felt just like that, a sailor who had finally found a lighthouse after days adrift in the darkness. The journey to downtown San Francisco, where the San Francisco Chronicle newsroom was located, was tense. Inside the crowded bus, Caleb clutched the envelope with the evidence to his chest, feeling as if he were carrying a ticking bomb. Beside him, Sophia hummed quietly, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, while Clara kept a watchful eye on any suspicious movements from other passengers. "What if this journalist isn't there?" Clara whispered, leaning towards Caleb. "Or worse, what if she doesn't believe you? Victoria has always been a professional with integrity. If I show her this evidence, she'll at least investigate," Caleb replied, trying to sound more confident than he actually felt. When they got off near Union Square, in the historic heart of San Francisco, the sun was beginning to set, painting the Victorian facades in orange hues. The newspaper building was 2 blocks away, a modernist structure clashing with the old architecture. "I hope she's there," Caleb murmured as they approached the entrance. At the reception desk, a middle-aged woman with thick-rimmed glasses looked at them suspiciously when Caleb asked to speak with Victoria Lane. "Ms. Lane is in an editorial meeting. She doesn't see anyone without an appointment," she stated curtly. "Please tell her Caleb Anderson needs to see her urgently. It's about the Apex Innovations case." The receptionist raised her eyebrows upon recognizing the name. "You're... that Caleb Anderson? The one from the fraud case?" Caleb sighed. "Yes, that's me. And I've come to prove I'm innocent." The woman hesitated for a moment, then picked up the phone. She spoke a few words in a low voice, casting furtive glances at the trio. After a few seconds, she hung up. "5th floor. Room 507, she'll see you, but only for 5 minutes." In the elevator, Sophia held Caleb's hand, sensing his nervousness. "It's going to be okay. Uncle Caleb, the truth always comes out," Mom used to say. When they reached room 507, they found Victoria Lane standing by the window, with the San Francisco Bay as a backdrop. She was a woman of about 50, with grey hair cut in a bob and a sharp gaze. She wore a red blazer over a white blouse and had an ID badge hanging from her neck. "Caleb Anderson," she said, without extending a hand. "I must confess I didn't expect to see you so soon after everything that's happened. Victoria, thank you for seeing me. I know you must be busy." "5 minutes," she interrupted, checking her wristwatch. "That's what I can offer." "That's enough," Caleb replied, pulling the envelope from his inner jacket pocket. "I have proof that David Vance is the one truly responsible for the fraud at Apex Innovations." Victoria glanced at the envelope, then at Sophia and Clara, clearly confused by their presence. "And who might your companions be?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "This is Sophia Miller, daughter of my former executive assistant, Teresa Miller. And this is Clara Fisher, Sophia's legal guardian. They're the ones who helped me find this evidence." Victoria took the envelope, still skeptical, and began to examine its contents. As she read Teresa's letter and analyzed the photos, her expression gradually shifted from skepticism to interest. "This is substantial," she admitted after a few minutes, "but I need to verify the authenticity of these documents. Who's to say they weren't forged?" "The flash drive," Caleb said, holding out the small red device. "It has everything: emails, spreadsheets, recordings. Teresa documented everything meticulously." Victoria plugged the flash drive into her computer and began to browse the files. Her eyes widened as she examined the content. "My God, this is much more serious than we thought," she murmured. "It's not just embezzlement. There are signs of money laundering, tax evasion, stock market manipulation." "So you believe me?" Caleb asked, feeling a lump in his throat. Victoria took a deep breath, removing her glasses and massaging the bridge of her nose. "I believe there's enough material here for a serious investigation. And yes, if all of this is true, you were the victim of a very well-orchestrated setup." She looked at her watch again. "Your 5 minutes have turned into 15, and I have a meeting with the editor-in-chief in 5. Leave the material with me. I need to analyze it carefully and consult with experts." "How long will it take?" Caleb asked anxiously. "My situation gets worse with each passing day." "Serious journalism can't be rushed, Caleb. I have to confirm everything before publishing anything. If I make a mistake, not only is my reputation on the line, but also your last chance to clear your name." Victoria paused. "That said, I can promise I'll work on this as quickly as possible. We might have something by the end of the week." "And in the meantime," Clara intervened, "where will he stay? These criminals could be looking for him." "It's not safe." Victoria considered the question for a moment. "I have a beach house on Ocean Beach that I don't use during the week. You can stay there for now. It's a discreet place. No one would think to look for you there." She opened a drawer and took out a key. "I just ask for absolute discretion. No one can know you're there." "Thank you, Victoria." "I don't know how to thank you," Caleb said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank me by publishing the truth," she replied, handing him the key. "And Caleb, be careful. If David was capable of orchestrating all of this, he won't hesitate to do worse if he finds out you have evidence against him." With the key in hand and a makeshift map drawn by Victoria, the trio left the newsroom via the service elevator to avoid being seen. The house was nearly an hour away, and they would need to take 2 buses to get there. On the way, Sophia fell asleep with her head on Caleb's shoulder. The scene moved Clara. "She trusts you," the woman commented. "Sophia isn't like that with just anyone. She has a 6th sense about people." "She's a special girl," Caleb agreed. "Without her, I probably wouldn't be here anymore." Teresa raised her alone since her father left them when Sophia was just 2. It was a struggle, but she always made sure to give her daughter the best: good books, cultural outings, solid values. Caleb felt a pang of guilt. As the owner of Apex Innovations, he probably didn't pay enough attention to the personal problems of his employees. How many Teresas had passed through his company without him ever truly knowing them? "When this is all over," he said, looking at the city passing by the bus window, "I want to do things differently. Not just business, but people. To value who really matters." "If this ends," Clara corrected, ever pragmatic. "First, let's see if this journalist can help." They arrived at the beach house late at night. It was a simple but charming structure, with blue walls faded by the sun and a small porch facing the sea. The interior was cozy, with wooden furniture and rustic decor. Sophia, still sleepy, was settled in one of the rooms, while Clara prepared tea in the small kitchen. We have no food, she noted. Opening empty cupboards, and almost no money either. I'll sort that out tomorrow morning, Caleb promised. I know a few people who might lend me some money without asking too many questions. They spent the night in a tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Caleb could barely sleep, mentally replaying everything that had happened in the last few days. How had he not noticed David's maneuvers within his own company? How had he been so blind? The next morning, Sophia was the first to wake up, excited by the proximity of the sea. Her joyful shouts upon seeing a school of fish near the shore woke the adults. "Uncle Caleb, come see. There's a bunch of silvery little fish." Caleb smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. It was refreshing how children could find joy even in the most difficult situations. After an improvised breakfast of crackers that Clara found at the back of a cupboard, Caleb decided it was time to seek help. "I'm going into the city to talk to an old friend. He owns a hardware store and might be able to lend me some money." "Are you sure it's safe?" Clara asked, worried. "I'll stay away from downtown, and no one would expect to find me in a simple neighborhood like this." Caleb took a bus to the Mission District, where his friend Ryan Sullivan's store was located. The two had studied engineering together in college, but had followed different paths. While Caleb built his tech empire, Ryan maintained the family hardware business, always refusing offers to expand or join larger chains. Sullivan Hardware was a medium-sized establishment with a simple facade and a worn-out sign. When Caleb entered, he found Ryan behind the counter, explaining the differences between types of cement to a customer. Ryan didn't recognize him at first. The Caleb Anderson who appeared in business magazines wore impeccable suits and had an imposing presence. The man before him looked haggard, with wrinkled clothes and deep dark circles under his eyes. "Ryan," Caleb called, approaching after the customer left. "Caleb? My God, is that really you?" Ryan's eyes widened. "Man, you're all over the news." "What happened?" "A long story, old friend. And don't believe everything you read in the papers." Ryan looked around, checking for customers, and called over his employee. "Paul, watch the store for a minute. I'm going to talk with my friend in the back." In the back of the store, in a small room that served as an office, Ryan poured coffee into simple ceramic mugs. "So, you didn't embezzle billions?" he asked, trying to sound casual but clearly tense. "No, Ryan, I was the victim of a very well-planned setup by my CFO, David Vance." "The guy who's accusing you on TV? The one with the saintly face?" "The very same. He orchestrated everything and set me up as the scapegoat." Caleb told him the whole story. Sophia finding him on the bridge, Teresa's notebooks, the flash drive with the evidence, and the journalist Victoria analyzing the material. "Wow, that sounds like a movie script," Ryan commented, impressed. "And what do you need from me?" "I doubt you came just to vent." "I'm out of money, Ryan, literally. My accounts are frozen, cards cancelled, I have no access to anything. I need a loan to survive until Victoria's story is published." Ryan scratched his unshaven chin, thoughtful. "You know I'm not rolling in money, right?" "The store does okay, but I've got 5 kids to support, college, private school. I know, and I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. I promise to pay back every penny as soon as this is all over." Ryan sighed deeply, then opened a desk drawer and took out an envelope. "I've got $2,000 here. It was for the twins' school supplies, but I can pay for that in installments." He handed the envelope to Caleb. "Just promise you won't disappear. I'm trusting you." "Thank you, Ryan. I'll never forget this," Caleb said, his voice choked with emotion. "And one more thing." Ryan stood up and went to a locker in the corner of the room. "I think we have some clothes your size here. No offense, but you look like you're homeless, and that attracts attention." He handed Caleb some simple shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and a pair of sneakers. "These are the clothes I use for construction work. Nothing fancy, but they're clean. They're perfect," Caleb said, genuinely grateful. After changing in the store's bathroom and securing the money, Caleb said goodbye to his friend. "If you need anything, call me," Ryan said, handing him a simple prepaid phone. "I've already put my number in the contacts. It's not a smartphone, but you can make calls." "I don't even know how to thank you. Thank me by proving your innocence." "I always believed in you, Caleb. Ever since our college days when everyone said your senior project was too ambitious." Back at the bus stop, Caleb felt renewed. With clean clothes, money in his pocket, and a phone, It felt like things were finally starting to look up. On the way to Ocean Beach, he stopped at a small market and bought basic groceries: rice, beans, eggs, fruit, bread, milk, and some candy for Sophia. He also bought toiletries and a newspaper. As he flipped through the pages, his heart sped up. In the business section, a small note caught his attention. Investigative journalist from the San Francisco Chronicle claims to have new evidence in the Apex Innovations case. Special report to be published soon. Victoria was already setting the stage. This was both good and bad. Good because it meant she was taking the case seriously. Bad because it would alert David that something was happening. Arriving at the beach house, he found Sophia playing in the sand with seashells, while Clara knitted on the porch. "I brought food and clean clothes," he announced, showing the bags. "Thank God." This girl was already complaining about being hungry, Clara said, getting up to help with the groceries. As they put the food away in the kitchen, Caleb showed the newspaper to Clara. "Victoria is already laying the groundwork. Soon the truth will come out. I hope it's soon. We can't stay hidden here forever. Sophia needs to go back to school, and I need to get back to my job at the hospital." That evening, after a simple but comforting dinner, they played cards on the porch, listening to the sound of the waves. For a few hours, they almost managed to forget the precarious situation they were in. Sophia laughed at the faces Caleb made when he lost, and even Clara relaxed a little, telling stories about her youth in the Napa Valley wine country. 2 days passed in this improvised routine. Caleb called Ryan regularly to see if there was any news. On the morning of the 3rd day, as they were having breakfast, they heard a knock on the door. Everyone froze. No one knew they were there except for Victoria and Ryan. "Stay here," Caleb whispered, grabbing a kitchen knife as a precaution. He approached the door slowly. "Who is it?" "Victoria Lane, open up quickly, I need to talk to you." Caleb opened the door, relieved. Victoria rushed in, looking agitated. She carried a folder of documents and her laptop. "I have news," she said without preamble. "Some good, some not so good. What did you find out?" Caleb asked, as Clara poured a cup of coffee for the journalist. "I've verified Teresa's documents. They're authentic, no doubt. The bank records, the emails, everything checks out." Victoria opened her laptop. "I even managed to trace some of the offshore accounts mentioned in the documents. The money was transferred through a complex network of shell companies, but they all lead to a holding company in the Cayman Islands whose ultimate beneficiary is David Vance." "That's incredible." "It's more than we needed," Caleb almost shouted with joy. "Yes, but here's the complicated part," Victoria paused. "David is no amateur. He has powerful connections. When I started digging deeper, I found out that the main witness against you in the police inquiry is Leonard Carter, the legal director of Apex Innovations." "Exactly." "And surprise, I found substantial transfers to accounts in his wife's name. He's part of the scheme, Caleb. And there's more: Jonas Peterson from the Fiscal Council, Richard Nolan from Internal Audit." "The web is huge." Caleb sat down, stunned. It wasn't just David. It was a conspiracy involving a large part of the senior management of the company he had founded. My God. How did I not see it? They were very careful. And you were too busy with the company's international expansion, weren't you? Meetings in Asia, the US, Europe. Meanwhile, they were dismantling everything from the inside. Victoria showed him a timeline she had put together. It all started about 2 years ago, when you announced your intention to go public on the US stock market. The IPO would have been the perfect opportunity for them. With the overvaluation of the shares in the first few days, they could have siphoned off billions without anyone noticing in the midst of the market euphoria. "So what do we do now?" Caleb asked, feeling the weight of the revelation. "I'm publishing the story tomorrow." "It's practically finished." "But there's a problem." Victoria hesitated. "David knows I'm investigating. I got a call yesterday offering an exclusive interview with him. When I refused, his tone changed. He said I should be careful about the sources I choose." "Is he threatening you?" Clara asked, horrified. "In a veiled way, yes, and that worries me." "If he suspects you have this evidence, Caleb, he'll do anything to stop it from going public." "We need to hand all of this over to the police," Caleb suggested. "Don't be naive. How do we know which cops are trustworthy? David has enough money to buy off anyone he wants." Victoria closed her laptop. The plan is this. I'm going back to the newsroom and finalizing the story today. It will be published tomorrow on the front page, and I'll simultaneously send all the material to the FBI, which is outside local jurisdiction and less likely to be corrupted. And us? We stay here? No, this place isn't safe anymore. If David threatened me, he might have followed me here. Victoria handed a card to Caleb. This is the address of an inn in Stinson Beach, about an hour from here. It's in my sister's name. Go there today and don't leave until I contact you. Stinson Beach is on the way to my beach house, remarked Sophia, who had been listening quietly until then. Can we visit the seals at the Marine Mammal Center? The adults looked at the girl, surprised by her ability to find something positive even in such a tense situation. Of course, sweetie, Victoria said, smiling for the first time since she arrived. When this is all over, you can take a full tour of the region. After Victoria left, they began to pack the few things they had. The plan was to leave the house before dusk, take a bus to the main terminal, and from there another to Stinson Beach. I have a strange feeling, commented Clara, as she closed her small bag. Like someone is watching us. It must be just nerves, Caleb replied, trying to sound calm, though he also felt a growing unease. Sophia was on the porch, putting seashells she had collected on the beach into a small plastic bag, when she noticed a car parking some distance from the house. Uncle Caleb, she called in a low voice, there's a black car parked out front, and 2 men are looking this way with binoculars. Caleb ran to the porch and discreetly peeked through the plants. The car was a black sedan with tinted windows. He couldn't see the occupants, but the vehicle definitely looked out of place on that street of simple houses. Clara just grabbed the essentials. We need to leave through the back now, he said, trying to stay calm so as not to scare Sophia. Do you think they're David's men? Clara asked, already packing only documents and a few basic belongings in her purse. I don't want to wait to find out. The house had a small back door that led to the beach. They went out that way, walking quickly along the sand, blending in with the beachgoers and street vendors. Let's go to the bus stop on the main avenue. From there we can go straight to the terminal, Caleb instructed. Holding Sophia's hand tightly, they walked about 500 yards along the beach, then climbed a set of stairs that led to the avenue. When they reached the bus stop, they saw the same black car driving by slowly. Get down, Caleb whispered, pulling the 2 of them behind a coconut water stand. The car drove past apparently without noticing them. Minutes later, a bus stopped at the stop and they boarded quickly. Where are we going now? Sophia asked, sitting between Caleb and Clara at the back of the bus. Change of plans, Caleb replied. We can't go directly to the terminal. They're probably watching them. And the inn in Stinson Beach? We'll still go there, but we need to lose these guys first, Caleb thought quickly. They needed a safe place to spend a few hours until they could head to Stinson Beach without being noticed. I know a place, he said after a few minutes. An old friend has a mechanic shop in the Potrero Hill neighborhood. We can stay there until nightfall, then take a cab straight to Stinson Beach. They got off at a transfer station and took another bus to Potrero Hill. Martin and Sons was a spacious garage, with several cars in various stages of repair. George Martin, the owner, was a burly man with calloused hands and an easy smile. He and Caleb had met during a social project sponsored by Apex Innovations, offering technical courses to young people from underprivileged communities. Caleb Anderson, George exclaimed, surprised. What brings you to my humble shop? Especially considering, well, you know, I need your help, George, just for a few hours. Caleb explained the situation, and George, without asking many questions, offered them the office at the back of the shop to rest. Make yourselves at home. I have a sofa bed and a fridge with water and sodas. No one will look for you here. While Sophia slept on the sofa bed, exhausted from the day's tension, Caleb and Clara talked in low voices. How long do you think this chase will last? She asked, worried. If all goes well, only until tomorrow. When Victoria's story is published, the public pressure will be so great that not even David will be able to cover it up. And if it doesn't go well? Caleb had no answer for that. The future was uncertain, and the only evidence that could save him was with Victoria. If something happened to her or the material, the phone Ryan had given him rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was an unknown number. Hello? Caleb answered cautiously. Caleb, it's Victoria. Her voice sounded tense, almost a whisper. I'm being followed. Someone broke into my apartment and took my laptop. My God, what about the documents? The flash drive? They're with me, I always carry them in my pocket. But we need to speed up the plan. I can't wait until tomorrow to publish. What are you going to do? Thurs to work, I'm heading to the newsroom now. I'm going to finalize the story and publish it online today. I'm also sending everything to my contacts at the FBI immediately. Be careful, Victoria. These men are dangerous, and don't worry about me. Are you still at the same place? No, we had to leave in a hurry. We're in a safe place for now, but we're heading to Stinson Beach tonight. Good. Stay there and wait for my call. As soon as the story is published, things will happen very quickly. After hanging up, Caleb relayed the conversation to Clara, who looked increasingly worried. This is getting too dangerous, Caleb. I'm thinking about Sophia. She's just a child. I know. And that's why I need to end this as soon as possible. Sophia and you don't deserve to be involved in this. At 7 p.m., George closed the shop and offered to drive them to Stinson Beach in his pickup truck. It's safer than taking a cab or bus, he argued. No one will suspect an old pickup truck leaving the shop. They gratefully accepted the offer. Sophia, who had just woken up, was excited about the night ride. We're going to see the stars on the highway, Uncle Caleb, she exclaimed as they climbed into the truck. The drive to Stinson Beach took about an hour and a half. George drove in silence, occasionally checking the rearview mirror to make sure they weren't being followed. Caleb tried calling Victoria several times, but every call went to voicemail. She must be busy with the story, he commented to Clara, trying to convince himself more than her. When they finally arrived at the inn, a rustic building near the beach, they were greeted by Victoria's sister, Marcia, a serene-looking woman with the same sharp eyes as the journalist. Victoria called to say you were coming, she said, leading them to a simple but comfortable suite at the back of the inn, away from the prying eyes of other guests. You can stay here as long as you need. After George left, promising to return the next day to check on them, they were finally able to relax a little. Sophia took a bath and fell asleep quickly, while Caleb remained on the small porch trying once again to contact Victoria. Still no answer? Clara asked, joining him. Nothing. I'm getting worried. Let's check the news. If she published the story, it should be on some news portal. They turned on the small television in the room, keeping the volume low so as not to wake Sophia. They flipped through the news channels, but there was nothing about the Apex Innovations case or any new revelations. Maybe it's still too early, Clara suggested, trying to be optimistic. These things must take time. But Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong. The last conversation with Victoria indicated urgency, haste. If she had really gone straight to the newsroom, the story should have been online by now. His phone finally rang. It was Ryan. Caleb, did you see the news? The journalist Victoria Lane was in a car accident on the freeway. She's being taken to the hospital right now. Caleb's world seemed to slow down. An accident right now? Do you know which hospital? He asked, his voice trembling. UCSF Medical Center, according to the report. Caleb, do you think that it wasn't an accident? I'm sure it wasn't, Ryan. I need to go there. Are you crazy? If this is David's doing, the hospital will be the first place they'll look for you. Caleb knew his friend was right, but he couldn't abandon Victoria. She had risked everything for him. I'll think of something. Thanks for letting me know. He hung up and explained the situation to Clara, who looked horrified. My God, they tried to get rid of her? Tyster, probably. And the worst part is, we don't know if she still has the documents and the flash drive. The two fell silent, the weight of the situation crashing down on their shoulders. Without the evidence, Caleb would be back to square one. Worse, now David would know he was trying to clear his name and would do anything to stop him. What do we do now? Clara asked. Caleb looked at Sophia, sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. We need a new plan. Around 1 p.m., Clara and Sophia left for San Francisco in John's car, who had driven to the farm to pick them up. Caleb watched the vehicle drive away down the dirt road, feeling a mix of hope and apprehension. They'll make it, June said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. My cousin Clara is tougher than she looks, and that little girl has her mother's intelligence. I hope so, Caleb replied. Because if we fail now, I don't know if we'll get another chance. The next few hours were extremely anxious for Caleb. With every minute that passed, his imagination created new catastrophic scenarios. Clara and Sophia being intercepted by David's men, Professor Miles denying he knew Teresa, the report having been destroyed. June tried to distract him with stories about the farm and her years as a cook in the homes of wealthy San Francisco families, but nothing could calm his unease. Meanwhile, John's car arrived at the UC Berkeley campus. It was a normal school day, with students walking between buildings, some sitting on the grass studying, others chatting animatedly on benches scattered across the campus. "I'll drop you off near the Haas School of Business," John explained, maneuvering the car through the parking lot. "Professor Miles's class should be ending in about half an hour. Stay near the building, but not too close to the main entrance. There's a plaza with benches under the oak trees, where you can wait without drawing attention." "And you?" Clara asked. "I'll be nearby doing my normal rounds. No one will find it strange to see a security guard circulating on campus. If there's any trouble, just wave and I'll be there immediately." John parked the car and pointed the way for Clara and Sophia. The two walked off, looking like a grandmother and granddaughter taking a quiet stroll through the university campus. Sophia was wearing a school uniform, borrowed from the daughter of one of June's neighbors, to reinforce the impression of normalcy. "Do you remember what Uncle Gus looks like, Sophia?" Clara asked as they walked. "Of course. He's tall, has white hair, and wears round glasses." "And he always carries a brown leather briefcase?" Sophia replied, excited by the adventure. They found a shaded bench with a good view of the business school's entrance and sat down to wait. Sophia flipped through a children's book they had brought, while Clara pretended to read a magazine, keeping her eyes peeled for any suspicious activity. At 4 p.m. sharp, students began to stream out of the building, signaling the end of classes. A few minutes later, Sophia tugged on Clara's dress sleeve. "Aunt Clara, look. It's him!" A tall, thin man with white hair and round glasses was leaving the building, carrying a brown leather briefcase exactly as Sophia had described. He walked slowly, occasionally stopping to chat with some students. "Let's go," Clara whispered, standing up. "We'll approach him now before he goes into the other building for his meeting." They approached the professor, who was now walking alone towards another building. Sophia, impulsive as any child, ran ahead. "Uncle Gus," she called, waving. The professor stopped, confused for a moment, until his face lit up with recognition. "Sophia?" "Sophia Miller. My goodness, it's been so long." He bent down to hug the girl. "Look how you've grown." Clara approached, smiling politely. "Professor Miles, I'm Clara Fisher, Sophia's legal guardian. Teresa was like a sister to me." The professor stood up, adjusting his glasses. "Ah, yes, Teresa mentioned you several times. It's a pleasure to meet you, though under such complicated circumstances." He looked at Sophia with tenderness. "I was so sorry to hear about Teresa. She was an extraordinary woman." "Professor, we need to talk to you about something important," Clara said, lowering her voice. "In private, if possible." August looked at his watch, then at the building where his meeting was to take place. "I have a department meeting in 5 minutes, which I unfortunately cannot miss. But I'll be free after that. Can we talk in my office around 6:15? Clara hesitated. Waiting another 2 hours on campus increased the risk of being discovered. "It's about the special documents my mom left with you," Sophia intervened, her childish voice carrying a seriousness that belied her age. "Remember?" The professor visibly paled. He glanced around as if checking if anyone was watching them. "I see," he said in a low voice. "In that case, I think the meeting can wait. Come with me." He led them not to the main building, but to a small side annex away from the busier campus paths. They entered a modest office, with shelves full of books, an old wooden desk, and several stacks of papers and articles scattered everywhere. After closing the door and the blinds, the professor turned to them, his expression now grave. "For the past few days, strange people have been asking questions about me and Teresa at the university. Administrative staff were questioned about our relationship, and my office was searched during the night, though nothing was taken." He nervously adjusted his glasses. "I've kept the report I prepared for Teresa in a safe place far from here." "So you still have the report?" Clara asked hopefully. "Yes, it's in a safe deposit box at the Bank of America downtown." The professor sat down, inviting them to do the same. "But before I hand it over to you, I need to understand. Why do you want it?" And how did you know about it? Clara exchanged a look with Sophia, deciding how much she could reveal. Professor Teresa documented fraud at Apex Innovations before she left us. We know you helped her analyze those documents and prepared a detailed report proving that Caleb Anderson is innocent and that the real culprit is David Vance. The professor seemed surprised. So you know the whole story? Yes, and we are trying to help Caleb clear his name. He is with us in hiding. August stood up, visibly agitated. This is more serious than I imagined. When Teresa asked me to analyze those documents, I thought it was just an internal irregularity, something she wanted to report to the company's board. But after she passed and I saw what happened to Caleb Anderson in the news, I began to understand the true scale of the problem. Do you believe Caleb is innocent? Sophia asked, her eyes fixed on the professor. Based on the documents I analyzed? Without a doubt. He walked to the window, peeking through a crack in the blinds. The scheme set up by David Vance is sophisticated, but it leaves clear tracks for anyone who knows what to look for. In my report, I highlight at least 7 irrefutable pieces of evidence that he, not Caleb, was the mastermind behind the fraud. We need that report, Professor, Clara pleaded. It's the only chance we have to save Caleb and honor Teresa's memory. August seemed to ponder for a moment. There's something you should know. In addition to the report, Teresa gave me a flash drive containing recordings. Apparently, she installed a recording app on her phone and captured compromising conversations between David and other directors. These audio files, combined with the financial report, form a virtually irrefutable body of evidence. Clara's eyes shone with hope. That's incredible. We need those materials immediately. I agree, but it won't be that simple. As I said, the report and the flash drive are in a safe deposit box at the bank. I can't just go and get them now without raising suspicion, especially if I'm being watched. What if we went with you? Sophia suggested. Too risky, the professor replied. If those men are really watching me, they would notice you with me. They fell silent for a few moments, trying to find a solution. It was Clara who finally spoke. Professor, what if you signed an authorization for me to retrieve the documents from the box in your place? Many banks allow that. August considered the idea. That could work. The box is in my name, but I can add an authorized proxy. He opened a drawer and took out a piece of university letterhead. I'll draft an official authorization with a notarized signature. That should be sufficient for the bank. While the professor wrote the authorization, Sophia approached the window, curious. Gently parting the blinds, she watched the campus activity. That's when she noticed a man in a dark suit, seemingly out of place among the casually dressed students, standing near a tree, staring intently at the building they were in. Aunt Clara, Sophia called in a low voice. There's a strange man outside. Clara and the professor cautiously approached the window. The man in the suit was now talking on his cell phone, still keeping his eyes fixed on the building. He's one of them, the professor confirmed. I've seen that man for the past few days, always nearby, always watching. We need to get out of here, Clara said, worried. Sophia, where's John? The girl looked for the security guard, finally spotting him near the parking lot. There, near the cars. Professor, please finish the authorization, Clara requested. We need to leave before that man decides to check the building. August quickly finished the document, signing it with a fountain pen. Here you go. With this, you'll be able to retrieve the sealed envelope from safe deposit box number 237 at the Downtown Bank of America branch. Inside, you will find the printed report and the flash drive with the recordings. Thank you so much, Professor. This means a lot to us. There's one more thing, August added as he gathered his belongings. If something happens to me, there is a digital copy of all the documents. I sent it to my own email using special encryption. The file is called Lecture Notes, Advanced Accounting, but it actually contains all the material, password protected. And what's the password? Clara asked. SF Sophie Day, the professor replied with a faint smile. Teresa told me it was something special between her and Sophia. The girl smiled, moved to know that her secret password with her mother was still protecting the truth. Now, we need a plan to get out of here without being seen, the professor said. There's a back exit that leads to another street. Few people know about this passage, as it's mainly used by maintenance staff. Following the professor's instructions, they discreetly left through the back corridor, went down a service staircase, and emerged onto a parallel street, far from the watchful eyes of the man in the suit. "I have to go back," August said. "If I suddenly disappear, they'll become suspicious. You follow this street to the bus stop. Don't look back and don't come back to campus. From now on, any contact between us must be made with extreme caution." Clara shook the professor's hand, thanking him once more. Sophia gave him a tight hug. "Your mother would be proud of you, little Sophia," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She knew you would be the guardian of her legacy." After saying their goodbyes, Clara and Sophia walked quickly down the street, trying to look natural. At the first payphone they found, they called John, explaining where they were. In a few minutes he appeared with the car and they quickly got in. "Did you get it?" John asked as he drove away from the campus. "Better than we expected," Clara replied, showing the authorization signed by the professor. "Now we need to go to the bank downtown." San Francisco's traffic was heavy at that hour, with the typical late-afternoon gridlock. John skillfully maneuvered through the cars, taking alternate routes to get downtown faster. "We're being followed," he announced suddenly, checking the rearview mirror. "Black sedan, 2 men inside. There've been 3 intersections behind us." Clara turned discreetly, confirming the information. "How did they find us so quickly?" "Maybe they saw you leaving the campus and radioed in your description," John suggested. "Or maybe they put some kind of tracker on the professor's car and detected when you were with him." "What do we do now?" Sophia asked, holding Clara's hand tightly. "Change of plans," John decided. "We can't go to the bank now. I'm going to try to lose them." He made a sharp turn onto a side street, then another and another, zigzagging through the narrow streets of San Francisco's historic center. The black sedan, larger and less agile, had trouble keeping up in the tight alleys. "I think we lost them," John said after a few minutes of maneuvering. "But we can't risk going to the bank today. They're probably watching the place too." "Now what?" Clara asked, frustrated. "Caleb is waiting for this evidence." John thought for a moment. "Let's go to the bus station. You'll take a bus back to Oak Creek while I stay in San Francisco. Tomorrow morning, before the bank opens, I'll come get you from the farm and we'll try again when they're not expecting it." The plan seemed sensible. They headed to the bus station, where John bought tickets for the next bus to Oak Creek, which was leaving in half an hour. "Stay in the waiting area, away from the windows," he instructed. "I'll check to see if we were followed here." While John did a sweep of the terminal, Clara and Sophia sat in a discreet corner of the waiting room. The girl, tired from the day's tension, rested her head on Clara's shoulder and soon fell asleep. Clara watched the passengers coming and going, alert to any suspicious behavior. That's when she noticed a man who had entered hurriedly, looking in all directions. He was tall, with graying hair and a faint scar near his left eye. He wore a well-tailored suit that made him stand out among the more simply dressed travelers. Clara's heart raced. The man matched the description of Leonard Carter, the legal director of Apex Innovations, who, according to Victoria, was involved in David's scheme. She tried to wake Sophia discreetly, but the girl was sound asleep. She looked around for John, who hadn't yet returned from his sweep. The man continued to scan the terminal with his gaze, getting closer to the area where they were sitting. "Last call for boarding the bus to Oak Creek, departing from platform 7, the loudspeaker announced. Clara had to make a quick decision. She picked up Sophia, the girl still asleep, and headed for the boarding platform, trying to stay among groups of other passengers to avoid drawing attention. On the way, she spotted John returning to the waiting area. She made a discreet gesture with her head, indicating the direction of the platform, and he understood immediately, following them at a distance. "Your ticket, ma'am?" the driver asked as Clara reached the bus door. With difficulty, she managed to get the tickets from her pocket while holding Sophia. "Need a hand?" A male voice sounded behind her. It was John, who offered to carry the girl. "Thank you," Clara replied, handing Sophia to him as she presented the tickets to the driver. "There's a man looking for us," she whispered to John as they boarded the bus. "Leonard Carter, legal director of Apex Innovations." "I saw him," John confirmed. "And he's not alone. There are at least 2 other men with him, spread out across the terminal." They sat in the last seats of the bus, John carefully placing Sophia in the seat by the window, which had its curtains drawn. "What do we do now?" Clara asked nervously. "The plan was for you to stay in San Francisco." "Change of plans again," John replied. "I'm coming with you to Oak Creek. It's safer this way. The bus began to move slowly out of the platform. Through the window, Clara saw Leonard Carter running towards them, saying something into his phone. The bus accelerated, leaving the terminal before he could reach them. That was a close call, Clara sighed, leaning back in her seat. We're not safe yet, John warned. They could follow us on the highway or alert contacts in Oak Creek. Then we can't go back to the farm, Clara concluded, worried. Caleb and June would be in danger too. I have an idea, John said. My mother has a small inn in Stinson Beach, near the nature preserve. It's a remote place, mostly frequented by foreign eco-tourists. We can stay there tonight, and I'll call Caleb to tell him not to go back to the farm. But what about the bank? We need to get the documents from the safe deposit box tomorrow morning. I'll think of something during the trip. For now, we need to make sure we're safe, and that Caleb is too. The trip to Oak Creek took about 2 hours. Sophia slept the whole way, while Clara and John remained alert, watching the cars passing on the highway, checking if they were being followed. In Oak Creek, instead of heading to June's farm, they took a taxi to a small hotel near the bus station. From there, John called Caleb, using a code they had previously arranged for emergencies. Cousin, it's me, John. Remember that fish we caught last year? Well, we're going fishing again, but at that new spot I told you about near the preserve. Don't forget to bring Aunt June. She'll love it. On the other end of the line, Caleb immediately understood the message. They were being followed and couldn't return to the farm. They were to meet them at John's mother's inn, near the Stinson Beach Nature Preserve. Got it, cousin. We'll be there in a few hours. After hanging up, Caleb explained the situation to June. We need to leave here immediately. Dangerous men might be on their way. The elderly woman showed no surprise or fear. With the calm of someone who had weathered many storms in her life, she began to pack a small bag. I always have an emergency bag ready, ever since the protest days, she explained, pulling a bundle from the closet. You never know when you need to disappear quickly. June called a neighbor who owned a pickup truck, asking for a ride to the bus station under the pretext of a family emergency. In less than an hour, Caleb and June were leaving the farm, taking only the essentials. At the Oak Creek bus station, they took a bus to Stinson Beach. During the ride, Caleb anxiously watched the road through the window, thinking about Sophia and Clara. Had they managed to get the report? Were they safe? With every mile that passed, he felt his anxiety grow. They'll be fine, June said, as if reading his thoughts. My cousin Clara may seem fragile, but she has the resilience of a sturdy oak tree. And that little girl, Sophia, has her mother's intelligence and courage. Caleb nodded, trying to believe the old woman's comforting words. But something inside him told him the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. David and his accomplices were closing in, and time was running out. Meanwhile, in Stinson Beach, John, Clara, and Sophia arrived at the small inn run by John's mother. It was a simple but cozy place, with only 5 rooms, surrounded by native vegetation and just 500 yards from the beach. Mom, these are the friends I told you about on the phone. John introduced them to the middle-aged woman who greeted them at the entrance. They need to stay here tonight, but it's important that no one knows they're here. Clede, John's mother, a robust woman with a warm smile, asked no questions. She just nodded and led them to the room farthest from the reception area. This room has a separate exit at the back, she explained, showing them a discreet door that led to a small garden. And the walls are thick. No one will hear your conversations here. After Clede left, John closed the door and lowered his voice. We need to plan how we're going to get the documents from the bank tomorrow. I'm sure they'll be watching all the Bank of America branches in San Francisco. What if I go alone? Clara suggested. An elderly woman entering the bank won't arouse suspicion. It's risky, John replied. If Leonard Carter is involved, he'll have access to security cameras, entry logs, maybe even paid-off employees inside the bank. What if I went? Sophia's sleepy voice surprised them both. The girl had woken up and was listening to the conversation intently. No one suspects a child. Absolutely not, Clara replied firmly. We've already discussed this, but I could distract the guards while you go to the safe deposit box, Sophia insisted. Like we used to do at the farmer's market, remember? I'd pretend to be lost, and you'd grab the cheapest fruit without the vendor seeing. Clara blushed slightly. This is different, Sophia. We're talking about dangerous people, not market vendors. John, who had been deep in thought, suddenly had an idea. What if we entered the bank before it opened? I know the manager of the downtown branch, Mark Stevens. We went to college together. Maybe he'll let us in before normal hours through a side entrance. Do you think he'd agree? Clara asked, hopeful. For a compelling reason, yes. We can say it's a matter of life and death, which isn't far from the truth. John took out his cell phone and called his friend. After a brief explanation, he hung up with a smile. Mark agreed. We can meet him tomorrow at 8 a.m., an hour before the bank opens. He'll let us in through the employee entrance and escort us to the safe deposit box area. That's wonderful, Clara exclaimed. Finally, some good news. Just then they heard a light knock on the back door. John signaled for them to be quiet and cautiously approached, checking through a crack in the curtain. It's Caleb and June, he announced, relieved, opening the door for the newcomers. Caleb rushed in, hugging Sophia as soon as he saw her. Thank God you're okay. I was so worried. We did it, Uncle Caleb, Sophia exclaimed, excited. We found Professor Miles, and he has the report and recordings that prove you're innocent. Really? Caleb could hardly believe it. He looked at Clara, who confirmed with a nod. The report and a flash drive with recordings are in a safe deposit box at the Bank of America, she explained. We have an authorization signed by the professor to retrieve them. John has already arranged for us to enter the bank tomorrow morning, before it opens to the public. Caleb felt a wave of emotion wash over him. After weeks of despair, there was finally a light at the end of the tunnel. He hugged Sophia again, then Clara, John, and even June, who laughed at the effusive gesture. I don't know how to thank you all, he said, his voice choked with emotion. You risked everything for me. We did what was right, Clara replied simply, as Teresa would have done. That night, for the first time in a long time, Caleb slept soundly, without nightmares or sudden awakenings. He dreamed of a future where his name was cleared, where he could walk the streets of San Francisco without fear, where Sophia smiled by his side as they fed the pigeons on the bench by the water. But fate still had a few more obstacles in his path. The next morning, at 7:30 a.m., everyone was ready to leave. John had borrowed his mother's car, an old but well-maintained Fiat Uno, less conspicuous than his own pickup truck. Clara carefully placed the professor's signed authorization in her purse, checking 3 times to make sure it was there. Only John and I will go to the bank, Caleb announced, to everyone's surprise. It's too risky for all of us to go together. But I want to go too, Sophia protested. I've helped so far, I want to see the end of the mission. Sophia, understand. Caleb knelt to be at the girl's eye level. If something goes wrong, you and Clara need to be safe. You are plan B. If we're not back by 10 a.m., Clara will use the email and password the professor gave you to access the digital copy of the documents. The girl pouted but reluctantly agreed. Promise you'll come back, she demanded, holding Caleb's face between her small hands. Promise, I promise, Sophia. We'll come back with the evidence and all of this will finally be over. John and Caleb left shortly after, driving cautiously on the roads leading to San Francisco. The city was beginning to wake up, with early workers heading to their jobs, street vendors setting up their stalls, and fishermen returning with the morning's catch. They parked a few blocks from the bank, preferring to walk the rest of the way to avoid the car being recognized. Caleb wore a cap and sunglasses, a simple attempt at a disguise. The manager will meet us at the side entrance, the one used by employees, John explained as they walked. We need to be quick and discreet. As they approached the bank, however, they noticed something strange. There was unusual activity for that time of day. A police car was parked out front, and several people were gathered at the main entrance. Something happened, Caleb murmured, feeling a chill. Let's go around and use the side entrance as planned. They circled the block, arriving at a narrow alley where the bank's service door was located. To their surprise, Mark, the manager, was already waiting for them there, visibly nervous. John, thank God you're here, he said, rushing them inside. Something terrible has happened. What's wrong? John asked as they quickly entered. Professor August Miles was found unconscious in his apartment this morning. Apparently he had a serious fall. He's in the hospital in critical condition. Caleb felt the blood freeze in his veins. It was no coincidence. David had gotten to the professor. And the safe deposit boxes? He asked, dreading the answer. That's why the police are here, Mark continued, leading them down an empty corridor to his office. There was an attempted break-in in the safe deposit box area during the night. The alarm went off and the intruders fled, but the police are investigating. Did they manage to open any boxes? Caleb asked anxiously. Apparently not. The security system worked before they could access any of them. But the police are checking all the records, and until the investigation is over, the safe deposit box area is sealed off. Caleb and John exchanged desperate glances. They were so close only to have hope slip through their fingers. "Mark, this is a matter of life and death," John pleaded. "We need to access box 237. We have legitimate authorization from the owner." The manager hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "John, you're my friend and I trust you, but I can't go against a police order. If I let you access the box now, I could lose my job, maybe even be arrested for obstruction of justice." "I understand," Caleb said, defeated. "How long will the investigation take?" "Hard to say. Maybe a few days, maybe weeks." Days or weeks that Caleb didn't have. With every passing hour, David consolidated his position, destroyed evidence, silenced witnesses. "There's one more thing you should know," Mark added, lowering his voice even more. "The officers who are here, they don't seem like regular cops. One of them was asking specific questions about box 237, even before we knew which one the intruders were targeting." Caleb and John exchanged alarmed looks. Fake cops or cops bought by David. The situation was even worse than they had imagined. "We need to get out of here now," John decided. "If these men are looking for box 237, it won't be long before they connect it to us." Mark agreed, leading them to an emergency exit at the back of the building. "This door leads to a private parking lot. From there you can reach the street without being seen." "Thanks for everything, Mark," John said, shaking his friend's hand. "Sorry to involve you in this. Be careful, my friend. Whatever you're into, it seems big." Caleb and John left discreetly through the parking lot, walking quickly away from the bank. Only when they were several blocks away, mixed in with the growing crowd of pedestrians, did they allow themselves to breathe a sigh of relief. "Now what?" John asked. "Plan A failed. Time for Plan B," Caleb replied, determined. "We need to get back to Stinson Beach immediately and access the professor's email. It's our last hope." What they didn't know was that as they walked back to the car, a man in a suit was watching them intently from a distance, speaking into his cell phone. "Mr. Vance," he said, "the target has been located, and it seems he's not alone." The return to Stinson Beach was tense and silent. Caleb kept his eyes fixed on the road, constantly scanning the rearview mirror for suspicious vehicles. John drove with concentration, avoiding main routes whenever possible. "Do you think we're being followed?" John asked, breaking the silence after a few miles. "I'm not sure," Caleb replied, "but it would be naive to think they're not looking for us. The raid on the bank, the accident with Professor Miles, David is eliminating all the evidence one by one. And we're the last one," John concluded grimly. When they arrived at the inn, they found Clara, Sophia, and June on the porch, visibly anxious. One look was enough for them to understand that the news was not good. "What happened?" Clara asked, standing up immediately. Caleb quickly explained about the attack on Professor Miles and the attempted break-in at the bank. "My God," Clara murmured, horrified. "Poor Professor Miles, he was so willing to help." "Is Uncle Gus going to be okay?" Sophia asked, her large eyes filled with concern. "We hope so, little one," Caleb replied, not sure if he was lying to comfort her or if he truly believed it. "We need to access the professor's email immediately," John said. "It's our last chance to get the evidence." Clede, John's mother, lent them her laptop, and they gathered around the kitchen table. Caleb typed in the address for the UC Berkeley webmail, trying to remember what the professor had told Clara. The username must be his institutional email, Caleb deduced. Probably something like august.milesberkeley.edu. "And the password?" John asked. "He didn't mention the email password, only the password for the protected file," Clara replied. "SF Sophie Day." Caleb tried several common password combinations without success. After the fifth attempt, the system displayed a message about a temporary lockout due to too many failed attempts. "Damn it," Caleb muttered, frustrated. "We can't access the email without the correct password." "Wait," interrupted Sophia, who had been watching the process intently. "Uncle Gus always used the password Bay Area 1958 for the university systems. He showed me once when we were playing on his computer. Bay Area 1958. Are you sure, Sophia? Caleb asked, surprised by the girl's memory. Yes. He said it was the name of the dog he had as a child, plus the year he was born. Caleb waited the necessary minutes for the system to unlock and tried the password Sophia suggested. To his surprise and relief, the login screen gave way to the professor's inbox. "Sophia, you're amazing," he exclaimed, hugging the girl. They searched the email folders for something named Lecture Notes, Advanced Accounting. After a few minutes of searching, they found the file in the Drafts folder, dated 2 weeks prior. "Here it is," Caleb said, clicking on the file to download it. It was a PDF document of about 120 pages. When they tried to open it, a screen prompted for a protection password. Caleb typed SF Sophie Day and the document opened, revealing its precious content. The first pages contained an executive summary prepared by the professor, explaining in clear and direct language how David Vance had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to embezzle funds from Apex Innovations. There were diagrams showing the flow of money through shell companies to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Panama. The following pages presented concrete evidence: copies of bank transfers, incriminating emails, records of secret meetings. There were also transcripts of the recordings made by Teresa, where David and other directors openly discussed how they were manipulating financial data and setting up Caleb to be the scapegoat when the scheme was discovered. "This is more than enough," Caleb murmured, impressed by the meticulousness of the work. The professor left no stone unturned. "And the recordings?" Clara asked. The professor mentioned there were audio files. John searched the email and found a compressed folder attached to the message. When they opened it, they found several audio files, all carefully named and dated. Caleb clicked on one of them, and David Vance's voice filled the kitchen. "We need to make sure all the parallel records are removed before the IPO. When the bomb goes off, Caleb will be the only one responsible. He signs everything without reading anyway. Trusts us too much. It will be easy to prove he was aware of everything." The voice of Leonard Carter, the legal director, replied, "And if he denies it, do we have a way to ensure he can't defend himself?" "Of course we do," David replied with an arrogant laugh. "We're preparing a trail so perfect that not even the best lawyer in the world could prove his innocence. Besides, the public will love to see a billionaire fall. The press is already on our side, just waiting for the signal to attack." Caleb turned off the audio, feeling a mix of anger and relief. It was painful to hear his own employees planning his ruin, but at the same time, those recordings were exactly what he needed to clear his name. "We need to get this to the police immediately," John said. "The FBI, not the local police who might be compromised." "And to the press," Clara added. "The more people who know the truth, the harder it will be for David to silence everyone." "Let's make copies of everything just in case," Caleb decided. "You never know what might happen to a single version of the files." John used his mother's laptop to make copies of the documents and audio files, saving them on different devices, flash drives, the computer itself, and even sending them to newly created personal email accounts. While they worked, Sophia quietly approached Caleb. "Uncle Caleb," she said seriously, "you're going to be famous again, aren't you? When everyone finds out you didn't do anything wrong." "Probably, Sophia. And you'll be a billionaire again with that big apartment and the shiny car." Caleb smiled faintly. "Maybe, but you know what? After everything I've been through, I realize that's not the most important thing." "What's important then?" "That people like you, like Aunt Clara, like your mom. People who believe in you when no one else does. Who do the right thing even when it's hard." Caleb stroked the girl's hair. "When this is all over, I want to use my money and influence for things that really matter. Like helping children without families, like creating scholarships in your mum's honor." Sophia smiled, satisfied with the answer. "Mom would be happy about that." The moment was interrupted by the sound of tires screeching to a halt outside the inn. John ran to the window and his face turned pale. 2 cars just pulled up. "Men in suits are getting out." "It's them," Caleb said, his heart pounding. "How did they find us so quickly?" "The email," John realized. "They must have been monitoring access to the professor's account. They probably traced the IP address here." "We have to go," Clara said, already grabbing her things. "Throw the back like last time." "There's no time," John replied, watching the men approach the inn's entrance. "They're already at the door." Then we'll face them, Caleb decided, surprising everyone. No more running. We have the proof now. Are you crazy? Clara exclaimed. These are dangerous men, maybe armed. That's exactly why we can't keep running. They won't give up. The only way to end this is to expose the truth once and for all. As they argued, they heard raised voices in the reception area. Clede, John's mother, was apparently trying to block the men from entering. Mom! John made a move to run and help her, but Caleb stopped him. Wait, I have an idea. He quickly explained his plan. It was risky, but it could work. Everyone agreed, albeit reluctantly. Sophia, Caleb called, kneeling to be at the girl's eye level, I need you to stay hidden in the room. Don't come out until I or Aunt Clara come to get you, okay? The girl nodded, scared but determined. Be careful, Uncle Caleb. Clara took Sophia to the room while the others prepared to execute the plan. June, with the courage of her years of political activism, was the first to take her position. In the reception area, Khalid was still trying to buy time. I've already told you. I don't know any Caleb Anderson, she insisted. This is a family inn. We don't host fugitives here. Ma'am, said one of the men with false politeness, we have reliable information that Caleb Anderson is staying here. Just let us check the rooms and we'll leave without any trouble. You are not police officers, Clede retorted firmly. You have no authority to invade my property. Perhaps this will change your mind, said another man, taller and more intimidating, pulling what looked like a police badge from his jacket. Detective Carlos Mendonça, SFPD. We are investigating the whereabouts of a fugitive from justice. At that moment, Caleb emerged from his hiding place, walking calmly to the reception area. There's no need to intimidate the lady, he said, surprising everyone. I'm Caleb Anderson, and I'm not a fugitive. I'm willing to accompany you to clear up this whole situation. The men seemed momentarily taken aback by his voluntary surrender. The supposed detective was the first to recover. Mr. Anderson, you are wanted for questioning regarding the fraud at Apex Innovations. I need you to come with us to the station. With pleasure, Caleb replied with a calm he didn't feel. Just let me get my belongings. Stay where you are, the man ordered suspiciously. I'll have one of my men get your things. Where are they? In the room at the end of the hall, Caleb replied, pointing in the opposite direction of where Sophia was hiding, a black suitcase near the bed. While one of the men went to check the room, John positioned himself strategically near the door, pretending to be just a curious guest watching the scene. June remained in the kitchen, from where she could see everything without being noticed. The man returned minutes later, confused. There's no suitcase in the room, sir. The fake detective shot a furious look at Caleb. What are you planning, Anderson? Where are your accomplices? I don't know what you're talking about, Caleb replied, maintaining his composure. I'm here alone, just resting before turning myself into the authorities voluntarily. Enough games, the man growled, losing his patience. We know you have the evidence that incriminates David Vance. Where are Professor Miles's documents? With that admission, the man unwittingly revealed he was not a legitimate police officer. Caleb smiled inwardly. The plan was working. What evidence? What documents? Caleb asked, feigning confusion. I don't know what you're talking about. The fake detective gestured, and the other two men moved forward, grabbing Caleb by the arms. We'll do this the hard way then, he threatened. You're going to tell us where the documents are, or your friends will suffer the consequences. At that exact moment, the front door of the inn burst open with a crash. Several men in uniform stormed in, pointing their weapons. FBI, everybody on the ground now. The fake cops were caught by surprise. Two of them tried to draw their weapons, but were quickly subdued by the federal agents. The fake detective, seeing himself surrounded, tried to flee through the back, only to be intercepted by two more agents entering through the garden. In minutes, all three men were in handcuffs, while an agent checked to see if Caleb was injured. Are you all right, Mr. Anderson? I am, Caleb replied, still stunned by the speed of events. But how? The answer came in the form of a familiar figure entering through the door, Victoria Lane, the journalist, leaning on a cane with a visible bandage on her forehead, but very much alive and determined. Victoria, Caleb exclaimed, rushing to hug her. I thought you were silenced, she completed with a half-smile. They almost succeeded, but I'm tougher than I look. But how did you know where we were? How did you get the FBI involved? Your friend Ryan, Victoria explained. He visited me in the hospital and told me about your hiding place. As for the FBI, I was already in contact with them even before the accident. When I regained consciousness, the first thing I did was ask them to find you. Clara, who had remained protecting Sophia, finally came out of the room with the girl. Seeing the police and the handcuffed men, Sophia clung to Clara's skirt, frightened. "It's all right now, sweetie," Caleb reassured her. "These are the real good guys." The agent who seemed to be leading the operation approached Caleb. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Special Agent Robert Almeida with the FBI. We're investigating a money laundering and financial fraud scheme at Apex Innovations, Inc. We need your cooperation." "You'll have my full cooperation, Agent," Caleb replied. "And more than that, I have concrete proof that David, Vance, and other company directors were the ones truly responsible for the fraud." Caleb explained about the documents and recordings obtained from Professor Miles. John brought the laptop with the files, and the agent examined them intently. "This is extremely valuable, Mr. Anderson. Based on this evidence, we can issue arrest warrants for the real culprits immediately." "And Professor Miles?" Sophia asked, approaching timidly. "Is he going to be okay?" The agent smiled gently at the girl. "Yes, little one. We've been informed that he is stable and receiving the best medical care. We've placed police protection in his hospital room to ensure his safety." The following hours were a flurry of activity. The FBI took statements from everyone, copied the documents and recordings, and transported Caleb and the others to San Francisco under escort to ensure their safety. At the FBI headquarters, Caleb watched on the security monitors as David Vance was arrested at his mansion in Pacific Heights. The man who had destroyed his life and reputation was now being led away under the flashes of photographers, trying in vain to hide his face. In the same operation, Leonard Carter, the legal director, Jonas Peterson from the Fiscal Council, and 3 other Apex Innovations executives involved in the scheme were arrested. All had their assets frozen and passports confiscated. That same afternoon, a press conference was called. Agent Robert Almeida, alongside Caleb and Victoria, explained the details of the investigation and how Caleb had been the victim of an elaborate setup. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that Mr. Anderson had no part in the crimes committed, the agent declared. On the contrary, he himself was a victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by people he trusted. Victoria, still weak but firm, announced that she would publish a series of reports detailing the entire investigation, including excerpts from the recordings made by Teresa Miller. "This story is not just about financial fraud," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "It's about courage, about a mother who, even knowing she wouldn't be here to see justice served, left a legacy of integrity for her daughter." When the journalists asked to speak with Caleb, he surprised everyone by bringing Sophia to his side. "This girl and her mother are the true heroes of this story," he declared, his voice choked with emotion. "When everyone turned their backs on me, when I myself had lost hope, Sophia found me and showed me that the truth always prevails, even in the darkest of times." "What do you plan to do now, Mr. Anderson?" one of the reporters asked. "Will you return to lead Apex Innovations?" Caleb looked at Sophia, then at Clara, John, June, and Victoria, all the people who had helped him when he had nothing to offer but trouble. "My plans have changed," he replied. "I've spent the last few weeks living a reality very different from my privileged bubble. I've seen firsthand the hardships that millions of Americans face every day. I've also seen the solidarity, strength, and dignity of those who have little but share everything." Caleb paused, choosing his words carefully. "I will reorganize Apex Innovations, yes, but with a different purpose. Today, I am announcing the creation of the Teresa Miller Foundation, which will offer full scholarships to talented young people from underprivileged communities. I will also create a support fund for single-parent families, especially single mothers who, like Teresa, face countless challenges to raise their children with dignity." His statement was met with applause. Sophia by his side smiled proudly, as if she had always known this would be the outcome of the story. In the days that followed, Caleb's life was transformed again. His accounts were unfrozen, his assets returned, his reputation gradually restored. The headlines that once condemned him now celebrated him as an example of resilience and determination. But amid all this upheaval, one question remained: Sophia's future. Clara, though she loved the girl deeply, faced financial and health difficulties that complicated her ability to care for a growing child. A week after David's arrest, Caleb invited Clara and Sophia for lunch at his now-recovered apartment. The view of the San Francisco Bay was breathtaking, but Sophia seemed more interested in the books that filled the shelves of the office. "You like to read, don't you?" Caleb asked, watching her flip through an illustrated volume on astronomy. "Mum always said that books are windows to worlds we haven't yet seen," Sophia replied, without taking her eyes off the colorful images of nebulae and galaxies. Caleb exchanged a meaningful look with Clara, who nodded slightly as if giving permission for what he was about to say. "Sophia," he began, sitting next to the girl, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. Yours, mine, ours." Sophia closed the book, looking at him curiously. "Clara and I have talked and, well, we'd like to know if you would accept a different arrangement for our family." "What kind of arrangement?" the girl asked, frowning. "Clara would continue to be your legal guardian, your family, but I would like to be more actively involved in your life. As a mentor, a foster father, so to speak." Sophia looked at Clara, who smiled encouragingly. "You would live here with me," Caleb continued, "and Clara would move into the apartment next door, which I just bought. That way we would all be together, like an unconventional family, but a family nonetheless. And Aunt June and John?" Sophia asked, pragmatic as ever. Caleb laughed. "They are welcome to visit whenever they want. In fact, I've already offered John a job in the security department of the new Apex Innovations. And June said she can visit on weekends as long as I don't try to act like a stuck-up rich guy with her." Sophia was silent for a moment, processing the proposal. Then, with the direct simplicity of children, she asked, "Can I call you Dad?" Caleb felt a lump in his throat. "Only if you want to, Sophia. I never intend to replace the memory of your biological father or diminish the love your mother had for you. Mom used to say that family isn't just about who has the same blood." Sophia replied thoughtfully. "It's about who chooses to stay when they could leave." She looked at Caleb with her big, intelligent eyes. "You chose to stay, and I always will, Sophia, always." That night, as Sophia slept in the room Caleb had prepared especially for her, decorated with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that resembled the Oak Creek sky, he sat on his apartment balcony, contemplating the city he had almost lost. San Francisco glittered with thousands of lights, reflected in the dark waters of the bay, much like the view he'd had on that fateful night on the Golden Gate Bridge. But now, instead of despair, what he felt was gratitude. A little girl with a box of chocolates had changed his life forever. She had shown him that true wealth was not in bank accounts or corporate power, but in the bonds we create, the courage to do what is right, and the ability to start over, even when it seems impossible. He remembered the words Sophia said she learned from her mother. "Problems are like rain clouds. They pass, even the darkest ones." The storm had passed, and now a new day was dawning, full of possibilities. And as he watched the horizon, where the first rays of sun began to gild the sky, Caleb made a silent promise to Teresa. Wherever she was, her daughter would grow up loved, protected, and with all the opportunities she deserved. Her legacy of courage and integrity would be honored, not only through the foundation that bore her name, but especially through Sophia, the girl who had inherited her indomitable spirit. Somehow, on that muggy San Francisco morning, when he stood at the edge of the abyss, the universe had sent him not just a second chance, but a new family, a new purpose, a new beginning. And that, Caleb thought with a smile, was worth more than all the billions in the world. Dear listeners, we hope the journey of Caleb and Sophia has touched your hearts. This story of redemption, courage, and new beginnings reminds us that even in the darkest moments, hope can come from the most unexpected sources. If you were moved by this tale of overcoming adversity set in our beloved San Francisco, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow equally touching stories of American characters facing their own challenges. We've prepared a special playlist with narratives that explore the diverse shades of American life, which you can find by clicking on the left. Leave a like, share with friends and family, and tell us in the comments which moment of this story touched your heart the most. And don't forget to mention which city you're tuning in from. Until the next story,